I urged the horse on as we galloped away from the bandits chasing me.
Get back here!
I held the small treasure chest in my hands closer to me.
You'll never get my treasure!
The bandits soon overtook me and circled around me. One of them moved closer, scaring my horse and causing him to rear back.
Whoa! There, boy!
I lost my grip of the chest and it fell to the ground.
No! Ha ha! The treasure's mine!
But before the bandit could get his grimy hands on my treasure, I brought out my lasso and looped it around the chest, dragging it back into my hands. We galloped away, speeding far from those evil bandits. I found this treasure fair and square. All they wanted to do was steal it from me. Suddenly, I heard a loud ringtone. Someone was calling me. I held the reins of the horse and the chest in one hand, then swiped to answer my phone with the other. Hello? Bianca! What's up? Who is this? Antonio! Oh, hi, bud. Listen, I'm kind of busy right now. You're gonna want to hear this. You remember the precious ruby skull we thought was only a myth? Yes? Well, it's not a myth, Bianca. It's real. Some of my guys found a map that seems legit. I think this is it. Our dream come true. Send me the location. I'll be there soon. I hung up and dropped the treasure chest on the ground. You can keep the treasure, I called back to the chasing bandits. I found something much better. We rode all the way to my personal plane that I had parked out in the desert. I dismounted my horse. Go on, boy. Be free. The horse seemed to nod and strutted off. I boarded the plane, started up the engines, and was already off on my way to Antonio. Howdy, y'all. My name's Bianca. Please like and subscribe. Growing up, my life was pretty sad. I was an orphan in this rotten orphanage. I thought my life would be miserable for the rest of my life. Until one special day. When I was 8 years old, I was in the backyard of the orphanage playing with some tin cans.
Come on, brother! Let's go find the treasure! Oh no! Look out! A booby trap!
I heard the gate open and an old man walked in. He was very old, but I could tell that he was handsome once. And probably fit. I couldn't stop staring at the big hat on his head. I was mesmerized by it.
Who are you?
The man looked at me.
The name's Joe. Joe? That's a funny name.
The man chuckled.
I suppose it is. What's your name?
Bianca. The man looked at my tin cans.
What's up with these guys?
They're explorers.
You like to explore?
Yes. I looked down. But I'll never become an explorer. The old man seemed to be thinking. Then finally, he knelt beside me, and I felt a slight pressure as he placed his hat on my head.
Here, keep this. My time for adventure is over, but yours is just beginning.
My eyes widened.
Really? Yes. Don't give up, kid. Never give up. Adventure is waiting for you. You just gotta go look for it.
He smiled, stood up, then left as suddenly as he'd appeared. I always remember that day, because it was the day when I became certain I would find adventure in my life. Antonio had been an orphan too, and when I told him about my meeting with Joe, he'd been super excited as well.
Let's be explorers!
Yes, we'll be explorers together! There was one particular treasure that we both dreamed of finding. We discovered the treasure in an old book at the local library. The ruby skull. An ancient treasure left behind by an ancient tribe called the Lamocas. Antonio, we have to find it. We must. Years passed, and after I left the orphanage, I worked hard and saved enough money to book a flight to the Amazon. And that was where I stumbled upon the first ever treasure I would find in my career as an explorer. It was exhilarating when I opened up that chest to find hundreds of gold coins. Since then, I've found much more treasure. But as soon as Antonio called to say he might know where the ruby skull is, I soon forgot about all the other treasure. This was it, my dream adventure. I steered the plane over to the location Antonio had sent me. I slowly descended and spotted Antonio and some other people waving from a clearing. I landed the plane, and as soon as I got off, Antonio crushed me in a hug. Bianca, old friend, it's been too long. Way too long, brother. I see you still have Joe's hat. I nodded. Of course. I'll keep it forever. I smiled, then glanced at the other two people. Who is this? These are my good friends, Macy and Charles. They're both explorers as well. I figured we could use their help. Sure. Macy didn't even smile. She just nodded, then glanced away. What was her problem? Charles, on the other hand, gave me a beaming smile and bowed. I've heard a lot about you, Bianca. You're a legend amongst us explorers. I grinned. You hear that, Antonio? I'm a legend. Yeah. Antonio chuckled. Okay, guys. Are we ready? We all nodded. The entrance is this way. Antonio led us over to the entrance to an ancient ruin, what must have been an old temple. We walked down the staircase that led far underground. I brought out my torch as I peered around at the old stone and small engravings on the walls. It's so dark down here. We entered a small, empty room. What now? I started to wander around, when suddenly I heard a crunch and looked down to see a broken jar. Oops! What are you doing? Suddenly, the whole world seemed to shake, and we looked up in panic to see the exit closing up. Within seconds, we were trapped underground. Great! Just perfect! Now we're trapped! I'm sorry, guys, but don't worry. Maybe this was supposed to happen. Maybe... I thought you were a legend. Clearly the legends were false. Because you're nothing but a lousy explorer. Hey, leave her alone! Charles went to stand by my side. She tried her best. Guys, please. Oh, so now you're on her side. Fine, be that way. Macy stormed off, only to sit down in the far corner of the room. It would have been rather hilarious if we weren't in such a dangerous situation. If we didn't find a way out, we'd die from starvation very soon. Why don't we look for clues? Maybe Bianca's right. Maybe this was supposed to happen. We all spread out. Well, except for Macy, who chose to sit and brood, and started to search for clues. I was walking along, inspecting the engravings on the walls, when I discovered a symbol I had seen before. I remembered. On the back cover of the book from the library, the book about the ruby skull, this had been on the cover. Guys, come look! Everyone gathered around me as I nervously pressed on the symbol. Then, like magic, the symbol glowed a bright red, and a huge section of the wall slid back to reveal another room, bigger than the previous one, with beds, food, and water. Looks like this is our resting point. It would be good to take a break and a little nap. Nice work, Bianca. I winked at Charles and he blushed. Macy pushed through and shoved Charles aside before plopping down on one of the beds. Yeah, nice work, I suppose. I barked a laugh at Macy and winked at her too. Was it just me, or did she blush even more than Charles did? Pretty soon, we all went to sleep. But when I woke up a few hours later, I got the shock of my life. Antonio was missing. Antonio? Where are you? Where could he have gone? There's only 2 rooms. Do you think he found a secret pathway? No, he wouldn't have left us behind. Maybe someone took him. Who? The curse of the ruby skull. Is that even real? Maybe. Honestly, you're not being helpful right now. While those two continued bickering, I started to search Antonio's bed, where I found a note under his pillow. Guys, stop fighting! Come look at this! Tentatively, they gathered around me as we read the note. Miss him? Follow the clues to find your treasure. Clue number 1. No one can hear you down here, except, of course, for the doors. The doors? What does that mean? I sat there silently for a few minutes, thinking. Bianca, what are you thinking? I'm thinking... Guys, just follow my lead. And then, out of nowhere, I began screaming loudly. As loud as I could. Macy and Charles stared at me as if I had lost my mind, which I guess was understandable seeing how I was acting very weird. Come on, guys, just trust me. I screamed again, louder and louder, and I saw Macy shrug, then scream with me. Charles was more hesitant, but finally he relented and joined us in our screaming performance. 30 seconds passed and nothing had happened. But then suddenly there was a grinding noise and a giant rock moved to reveal a small tunnel, just big enough for us to crawl through. Yes! We did it! Macy squealed in excitement. Bianca, you're a genius! She hugged me and I stood there awkwardly. That was okay, I guess. Charles looked at us. That was strange. Come on, guys! Let's find Antonio! We crawled into the tunnel and crawled for what seemed like ages, until finally we emerged into a giant cavern. There was what looked like a bridge leading downhill. On either side of the bridge, there was darkness. I had no idea how far the drop was. Right at the entrance to the tunnel was a single skull that had giant ruby jewels in its eye sockets. Is this the ruby skull? No, it can't be. It's too easy. Let me see. Wait, Charles, don't! Too late! Charles lifted the skull, and instantly it dissolved into dust. We heard a loud, thundering boom, and suddenly behind us, a wall crumbled to reveal a giant ball of stone, heading straight for us. Run! We took off at full speed. Charles and Macy dove out of the way and avoided being squished, but when I leapt, my foot slipped and I went tumbling over the side. Luckily, I managed to grab hold of a protruding rock just in time, but I was quickly losing my grip. Help! Someone grabbed hold of my hand. I looked up, expecting to see Charles, but it was Macy. Hold on! She let out a cry and dragged me up and back to safety. I fell over and landed on top of her. We stared at each other for a while. Macy had just saved my life. This is awkward. I hurriedly stood up, moving away from Macy. I felt my face warm. Was I blushing now? We should get going. Yeah, sure. I led the way down the bridge, but just when I thought we'd gotten through the worst of it, we emerged into another room, a giant cavern with a raised throne. Antonio sat on the throne with a crown on his head. Antonio! At first, I was happy to see him, but when I moved to embrace him, he didn't budge. Oh, you're alive. Huh? You're supposed to be dead. Antonio? What are you talking about? Ugh! For once, can you just fail? Is that too much to ask? I don't understand. Macy stepped forward, understanding on her face. He set us up. He wanted us to get killed. What? You never found the ruby skull, did you? Antonio smiled evilly. Nope. Antonio! But why? Antonio turned eyes of hatred to me. Is it not obvious? Are you seriously too thick in the head to know why? We grew up together. We dreamt of being explorers together. Oh, yes, we did. And now we are explorers. Except whenever I get around to finally finding the treasure, I only discover that you've already stolen it. You've taken over the treasure hunting industry, Bianca. You have to be eliminated. I didn't know. I don't care about the treasure. If you wanted it, you should have just asked. I only care about adventure. Ha! You really expect me to believe that? Yes! Enough of this. It's time to take you out once and for all. Antonio raised a bow and arrow, hid him behind the throne. He looked me in the eyes. Goodbye, Bianca. Ah! Antonio pulled back the arrow. I was going to die. But then, out of nowhere, Macy appeared, leaping in front of me, shielding me with her body. No! The arrow streamed towards us, but my body moved of its own accord. And suddenly, my whip flickered out and hit the arrow away in midair. I didn't even know I was capable of doing that. Antonio howled. Curse you, Bianca! Suddenly, the whole cave started to shake. The whole place is gonna go down! We have to get out of here! Grab hold of me! I swung my lasso and aimed for an opening above where I could see daylight. By a miracle, the lasso caught hold of something, and Macy, Charles, and I all climbed up the rope. The whole place was truly falling to pieces now. I looked back in and called out to Antonio. My brother, please, come, get out of there. No, he looked very sad then. I'm sorry. Then a boulder fell over and Antonio disappeared. Bianca, come on! Reluctantly, I climbed up the rope and we all emerged above in the fresh air. We all caught our breath. Then I looked at Macy. She had leapt in front of me to save my life. Macy, you could have died. Why? Macy looked away. Yes? I like you, okay? Like me... what? I have a crush on you! My cheeks reddened. Oh. What? I don't know if you feel the same way, but... No! I took a deep breath, then grabbed hold of her hand. I would love to go on a date with you. Macy smiled in relief. Charles, meanwhile, looked as confused as ever. Okay, out of everything we've experienced today, that's the most shocking thing. Oh, shut up. I laughed too, but then I looked back to the entrance of the underground caves. Antonio was gone. I was sad, but I guess it was better this way.